video, and in today's video we'll talk about data warehouse architecture, data lake architecture, and data lakehouse architecture. So why do we need it at the first place? So what were the issues which has not been addressed by data warehouse and data lake architecture, so that we needed this architecture at the first place? Okay, so without wasting time, let's get started. So let's first understand data warehouse architecture and how does it work. So let's say, for example, if you work site, right, if you're working on any e-commerce website, then you might have inventory and this data needs to be updated live so that you can keep the track of the data. Now what if, so you cannot store the historical data in this. Now to store the historical data, you need the data warehouse. The name as suggests, it is a warehouse of data where the data from these databases are timely on time to time basis gets stored, and the storage mechanism is called as ETL. Now what is ETL is extract, transform and load, which means before getting data stored into the data warehouse, the data needs to be transformed into a certain structure and then loaded, so that every data in this data warehouse is a structured manner, so that it can be easily queried in the output. It can be easily queried and can be used in the end for reporting and data analysis. Now if I have to talk about the real-time application of this, would be let's say to figure out in the Diwali event, or any other event, what sort of clothes were being purchased the most. If you need to identify the purchases between men and women clothes, you can identify the data, and then accordingly the marketing team can define the strategies around it. So this is what the data warehouse basically is, but it has certain limitation, because the data in the data warehouse is being stored in a certain structure. We cannot store a different type of data like structured, semi-structured, unstructured data, and it cannot be used for the complex processing such as machine learning, where the machine learning requires the more complex data at the other place. So how do we resolve it? So this issue gets resolved with the help of data lake architecture. Now what is data lake architecture? Let's see this. So let's say, for example, you have different sort of data available with you. Firstly, let's say the structured data from the database itself. Then you have the additional video files. You might also have the images as well. You might also have the additional files which is in there. You might also have the audio files as well, right? So all these data, there's a different format altogether, right? And you can store all these different sort of data into in the data lake architecture. You can literally dump it in this data lake architecture, and which later on can be used for machine learning purpose, um, and more complex operations altogether. So these are the, you can perform different complex operations, but because the data stored here is not structured properly, and it is literally dumped, so it is very costly to retrieve this data. You need an additional tool to query such data and maintain this data, so this is very cost effective in order to saving and maintaining this data. So now we have seen this, the data warehouse architecture is very structured, but it cannot be used for the complex data processing. While on the other hand, data lake provides you much more flexibility, but it is tough at the time for you to retrieve the data and process the data. To solve these issues, Databricks organization came up with the new architecture pattern which is called as data lakehouse architecture. Now, how does it work? So, this data lakehouse architecture has simply five stages, or I would say five uh, steps in which the data is being stored and processed. So, let's say, so first is ingestion data. Now, what is it? So, as we seen, you have different sort of data, video, databases. You might have images and everything. All these data gets processed in a certain format. It gets unified into certain format, and then it is passed to the storage layer. So this is the second layer called storage layer. Now this process is called the ingestion layer, where all these data, although it is not structured, but still this process unifies all the data before storing it into the storage layer. Now when the data is get stored in the storage layer, there is another layer called metadata layer, which is metadata layer, which is the foundation, you can say, of the data lakehouse architecture. Data metadata, any of you who are associated with the software development, you know the metadata meaning. It simply means the additional information. So you can attach the additional information with the data stored inside the storage layer. You can pass additional information in terms of objects and everything. So it makes you easy to retrieve the data. This helps to achieve the properties the way we have in the structured mechanism. We have acid properties, right? You can also perform uh, versioning on the top of it. You can perform caching also. So it provides a lot of these feature which you would normally get into the structured query languages or structured schema. So now you also get these facilities on the unstructured or semi-structured data with the help of metadata layer. Now the another layer of the data lakehouse architecture is API layer, which is again really important. Earlier in the, if we go to this one, in the data lake architecture, we saw that retrieving the data is extremely cost effective because there's no specific data specific tool available, or the APIs were available. On the other hand, in the data lakehouse architecture, there are different APIs available. There are SQL APIs available in this architecture. There is it can be used for the structured data analysis. There are data frame APIs available which can be used for the machine learning along with the TensorFlow, PyCharm, etc. So, and there are other APIs are also available to retrieve the different type of data. So it makes the data retrieval very easy and very cost effective. Last is data consumption layer. Data consumption includes the end client involvement, where you can actually see the data which is being used. With the help of the data API layer and the metadata layer, this reporting becomes really efficient, and ultimately you get the data in more structured and easy way without spending too much money on the top of it. So that's the whole concept of using the data lake house architecture. Just to summarize what we have seen in the data lake architecture is, first, data from different sources like databases, videos, images and files, etc., gets converted into a unified manner, right? A one unified manner, and then it gets stored into the storage layer. Now along with the storage layer, there is a layer called metadata layer, which provides the additional information of the data which is got stored here. And then you have the API layer, which helps you to retrieve all these datas, right? It helps you to retrieve all these datas. And then in the end you have the consumption layer, which is the actual client which is using these APIs to retrieve these data, right? So this is the whole data lakehouse architecture, which where you can store any sort of data, structured, semi-structured, unstructured data. And these two layers helps you in maintaining and retrieving data very efficiently. And that's why this is very cost effective, and it is being used, it's started being used in different organization as well. So hope you might have liked this video. If you like this video, please uh, hit the like button. I hope you have liked this video. If you like the video, you can share with your friends so they can also get to know and learn from it. uh, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching.